这个特别演讲啊，那是很难得的机会啊。这个是就像我讲的，它是美国的这个 National Board 啊，国家考试，然后要去美国考试一定要经过他们这一关啊。那他是 President and CEO 啊，总裁兼执行长啊，Paul Gress 我们先用热烈掌声欢迎一下。昨天我们一起吃饭啊，那稍微说明一下，他这一趟来啊，他是说，因为事实上他已经看到我们成大的历届校友啊，那申请这个美国的毕业，大概这3年都没有断啊，每年大概1个啊，那去年2个啊，那去年有3位啊，所以他觉得说，势必要来这个看一下我们这边啊，看一下我们这个学校。那早上我们把我们的这个课程呢怎么给他，他说，我们课程这么完整的话，是不是以后可以把这个程序呢快一点啊？就是如果是雷同的啊，只要他只要跟我们确定说是不是我们的学生，我再上一下就可以了啊。所以那这样检查，这个是对他来他来了解确实了解我们的这个 school。那另外第2件来更重要，我想就是各位都有兴趣的，我就说那既然你一趟来了，是不是来跟我们介绍一下这个美国这个 OT 考试的一些规定？我们是不是好像有留一份资料？大家都没有带过来，没关系啊。如果到这事后需要，我秀一下给大家看一下。事实上，它很多资料在网页上都可以看得到。它有完整的这些介绍。不过事实上，在那个网络上也都可以download，甚至他跟我讲说找他跟我讲，事实上他们很多这个练习题可以完整的在网络上download，所以各位有兴趣的同学可以去看一下。那最重要的我早上跟他讲他说他们现在的考试已经进步到用 computer game 用 computer game 去做这个设计。我说哇，这里我也邀请一些学校老师来说，我们可以参考一下人家是怎么设计他们的这一个教育跟考试的那所以话不多说，因为我只安排他1个小时，他说1个小时就够了那我们就热烈的掌声欢迎Paul Gress。
And I agree 100% with everything he said. It's a pleasure to be with you today. I always enjoy these opportunities to reach out to occupational therapists across the globe and to help them understand what we do in the United States as far as the credentialing of occupational therapists. NBCOT is the largest organization in the world on credentialing of occupational therapists. We have over 200,000 therapists that have passed and worked in occupational therapy using our examination. A large number of our non-U.S. occupational therapists come from this part of the world. Southern Asia has traditionally produced a large number of occupational therapists. And it's my goal today just to give you a brief snapshot of NBCOT and also to the requirements to become certified in occupational therapy in the States. So I'd be pleased if you have questions, I'll attempt to answer them. And if I don't have the answer, I will get the answer and make sure I get the answer back to you. Thank you. Okay. My friend. Okay, thank you. Apologize. Before we talk about NBCOT, I think it would be helpful to talk about our mission. Serving the public interest by advancing client care and professional practice through evidence-based certification. One of the hallmarks of our credential is that it's rooted in research. We are very pleased with the fact that our requirements to become certified are based upon an analysis of the marketplace, what the job demands are, what the government requires as far as education and requirements. And number three, what the practitioners tell us they need to do, to know in order to practice safely and efficiently with their clients. NBCOT is accredited by two organizations. Probably one of the most important one, though, is ANSI, which is a member of ISO. ISO is the International Standards Organization. By being accredited by ISO, in fact, we are the only occupational therapy organization globally that has ISO recognition. What that means for people who may become certified and wanting to work in a different country other than the US or even Taiwan, is that if the country you wish to work in is a member of ISO, by agreement, that country must recognize your education and your credentials. So we've heard from a lot of therapists who left the United States to work in different parts of the world and were able to do so without any difficulty because of the ISO accreditation. ISO is, as you know, a world organization. Every 5 years, our organization goes through a re-accreditation, much like your university goes through accreditation with the World Federation of Occupational Therapy. We go through that same regimen for certification every 5 years. So we're very pleased to have that recognition, but more importantly, our therapists report back to us it was an effort well done for their regard. Some facts about NBCOT. As I said, we're the credentialed organization for the United States. The United States, as you know, is made up of 50 states. All 50 states require, in order to practice in their state, you must pass the NBCOT certification examination. There are over 160,000 therapists in the U.S. with the credential, and we also certify occupational therapy assistants. These are individuals who go to 2 years of college and graduate with a degree in occupational therapy assistant. The difference between the therapist and the assistant is the assistant does not do any evaluation. They do not develop the program. They execute the intervention, but they do not plan the intervention, and they do not discharge patients. So they are really there to assist the therapist in the execution of care. And we see that credential growing quite heavily in the States. Many of the occupational therapy assistants, their growth is in areas where there is lots of individuals who might be elderly in retirement homes and clinical care hospitals. Eligibility to become certified. Number one, you must graduate from an educational program that's accredited, much like the accreditation process of WFA here in the States. Those of you that, particularly the students in this room, must also go through a process called OTED. OTED is an equivalency of comparing your education here to that of an American graduate. And we'll talk a little bit about that later on in the presentation. There are 16 weeks of field work that one must satisfy, and that you also must graduate from college, obviously, with a master's degree in occupational therapy. In 2008, the requirement changed from baccalaureate degree to a master's degree in occupational therapy. And one of the drivers, one of the reasons for that, was practice in the U.S. has shifted to more private practice, more independent practice. And by law, those people to do that need to have an advanced or graduate degree. And the profession itself expanded some of its competencies, thus validating the need to have a master's degree as the entry-level requirement. And also, candidates must agree to a code of conduct, ethics. You'll behave in a certain way in order to maintain your credential. Well, I'd like to talk a little bit today about how we assess competency. In order to become credentialed, you must pass an examination. We have a formal certification examination that has been with us since we started certifying people in the 1970s. The basis of our examination is a study that we call a practice analysis. A practice analysis is a breakdown of what you do as an occupational therapist. What are the things that an occupational therapist does day in and day out, and what knowledge do they need to know in order to execute what they do on the job. We have this schematic framework of what a practice analysis is. If you could go to our website, you can download a complete study, and it really gives you a detailed explanation, a roadmap of what our test is all about. But primarily, we have a major area of emphasis, which we call domains. For the OTR examination, there are 4 domains of practice, and below that, there are tasks. Those are things that you do as a therapist. And knowledge is what you need to know in order to execute the task. So it's very logical. Under the domain of domain number 1, which is acquire information regarding factors that influence occupational performance throughout the occupational therapy process. And then domain 2 is the next domain, domain 3 and 4. And percentages on the right-hand side tell you what percentage therapists told us they do that on a daily basis. So number 1, they do more interventions, obviously. But number 2 would be, they would be formulating conclusions based upon the information they gathered in assessing the patient. That percentage also translates to the percentage of questions on the examination. Examination composed of 200 multiple choice questions. So 45% of the examination is questions involving intervention planning. 28% is formulating conclusions, etc., etc. So what we want to do is let students know what really is the emphasis of the certification examination. We don't want you to go into the test knowing how many questions do I need to know about interventions versus formulating and developing a program, etc. So we make that available to them. We have to make that available to you in a sense of fairness. So you don't go into the examination with not knowing such things. Here's an example of a domain, task, and knowledge. We present the domain 1, but here's a task under domain 1. Analyze evidence obtained from the occupational therapy profile to identify factors that influence the client's occupational performance. That's something that OT does. And knowledge 1 and 2 is the knowledge that they need in order to execute or to complete that task. Does that make sense to everyone? And so we have that for every question on the certification examination. So when you take our examination, you can link it right back to one of those tasks and one of those knowledges. So it's not a mystery. We don't want to have people feel like the test is an unknown, or they're trying to fool me, or they're trying to not give me all the information. No, every question is linked back to a knowledge, to a task, to a domain. So it's a very logical sequence. The beauty of that is, for candidates, you can prepare, you know what to prepare for. For faculty, they then can gear their courses, if they so desire, to make sure that what's covered in the course will also be addressed on the certification examination. We have developed for students a series of practice tools that we want to enable them to be better prepared for the certification examination. Many times you would go to individuals that have test preparation courses, or individuals that sell private tutoring sessions to students to prepare for the examination. We found that many of those individuals were not really following the blueprint for the certification exam, and the quality of the work really wasn't very good. So we developed a series of tools for the individual to prepare for the certification examination. The first one we provided for was we developed what we call a very flashcard type of program. We have games that they can play to test their knowledge and skill. We also have study guides. We also have practice examinations. So prior to taking the certification examination, students can schedule on their own time an opportunity to take a similar examination so they can assess their really preparedness to sit for the certification examination. We develop these tools not so much to compete with your education. I'm losing my voice, as you know. Thank you very much. That's better. Thank you. We developed these not so much to as a means of trying to supplement your education, but really to augment your education as far as what you may have had in school. We find that particularly with our foreign educated graduates, they may be out of school for 3 or 4 years before they would take our examination. We look at these tools as really as a way for you to assess your current level of knowledge on maybe how practice has changed, or new knowledges may have come into the field that you were not exposed to when you graduated from school. Many students report back to us that taking the practice examination, for example, really helped relieve the anxiety of taking a very large examination, that with the ability to sit down, take a similar type test, get their results, and measure how well they did versus what their optimal score could be. We have what is called a knowledge match game, where you are given a series of knowledge statements. You have to link them to various aspects of a particular OT situation. We have the flashcard game, which really is a way of having rote memory come back at you with knowledges of very basic OT information. And the practice test, as I said, very popular with our students, as well as with faculty. Many faculty use this examination sort of as a capstone test for a particular course. So when a student goes on fieldwork or comes back from fieldwork, they may take this examination as a pre and post test to see exactly if any learning has occurred during the 16-week clinical experience. Okay, that's really one of my reasons for coming today, is to really answer questions you may have about the foreign educated therapist. OTED means Occupational Therapy Education Determination. And what this means is that the OTED requirement is that we have to do an assessment of your credentials to see if it's equal to or comparable to that of a U.S. graduate. In order to qualify for a visa to come to the States, we have to verify for you that your education is that equivalent of that of an American graduate. And the way we have to do that is by evaluating your academic records, the courses that you took, to make sure certain courses meet the same standards of that of a U.S. graduate. We have to determine the fact that you have a master's degree in occupational therapy. You must have completed field work in part of your training, either at the baccalaureate or at the master's level. And the master's degree must be from an institution that has been authorized by the government or the Ministry of Education to award a master's degree in occupational therapy. Now, people may ask, why do I need a master's degree in occupational therapy and not just a master's degree? Well, in the United States, in addition to becoming certified, you also must get a license in a particular state to practice. And the states now require you to have a master's degree in occupational therapy in order to obtain a license to practice. So it would be unforgivable for us to certify you and wanting to come to the States and not be eligible to get a license to practice. So in a way, we are assisting you in that effort by requiring the master's degree. And it has to be in occupational therapy. Many people said, can it be in rehabilitative science? Can it be in special education? Any of those are, and the answer is unfortunately no. Because what happens is that your license is to practice occupational therapy, and your degree must be reflective of that particular professional title. The other reason for that is that our healthcare system is different in the States. As far as reimbursement for services. And one of the things that you must verify is the credential of the individual providing care. And one of the parts of the process is a credentials verification, which requires the person who is delivering the care to be an occupational therapist who has a degree in occupational therapy. okay? And so that is the process. It's basically, the OTED process is 250 competencies that an American student would have to satisfy in order to graduate from a US OT program. What we do is that we take your curriculum with your syllabi, and we do a side-by-side evaluation of your curriculum to the competencies. And what happens is, typically, if the person graduates from a school that has had many students go through, there's a probably very high probability that you would go right through the process. In some instances, people may have to go back and take additional coursework in order to complete the OTED process. The area where most foreign students have difficulty in completing the OTED process is the area of therapeutic modalities, which is ultrasound and those type of things. The orthotics and prosthetics, I know here that wouldn't be a problem. I was just in the lab, and I saw the Splinty lab there and the orthotics lab here. And the whole issue around dysphagia, that's another competency that was brought in at the master's level. Many students are able to pick up that coursework outside of the formal education setting through a continuing education provider or something to that effect. After you complete the OTED process, you then are eligible to take the certification examination. You're eligible for 1 year after you get approved, you have 1 year to take the examination. If you don't take it in that 1 year, you have to reapply, but not go through OTED again. That's a very laborious process. So what we do for universities is that we'll take this curriculum here, and we'll do an evaluation. I got the curriculum today. We're going to do an evaluation, and then we'll report back to the dean, to Chairman Chung, and what the result was. In my review of it, briefly, it looked very, very good. I didn't do a side-by-side, it looked very, very good. So that is the OTED process. And this is something that is not a NBCOT requirement. This is a requirement of the U.S. government. So the government requires us to do this for us. I'm sorry for my throat. Our history with Taiwan. To date, 70 students have gone through the OTED process since 2007. 55 have been approved. That doesn't mean the others have failed. That means that they're in the process of being reviewed and have some shortcomings that they're fixing. The VCVC application from Taiwan in 2003. That is the credentials verification that allows the individual who wants to come work in the United States apply for an H-1B visa. In order to get that visa, you must attain the VCVC certificate. To get the VCVC certificate, you must pass our examination. Does that make sense? Okay? And the VCVC is us telling the U.S. government that you are eligible to apply for a visa to come work in the United States. This whole process started after September 11th. The U.S. government changed a lot of the immigration policy after September 11th. And the VCVC is our way of telling the government that you are eligible to get into the lottery to apply for a visa to come to the States. Are there any questions at all? I'm doing better than I usually do then. That's good. Thank you. let's go over the OTED one more time, because I went over that very quickly. We need an official and final transcript from your university. Many students have gone to more than one school. So therefore, we would need transcripts from every school that you went to. Many may have gone to a baccalaureate degree in one school, now they're taking their master's degree at another university. We would need both of those particular transcripts. We need a letter from your program director verifying that you've completed the fieldwork requirement. And number 3, your educational curriculum for all OT education that you want us to look at as far as doing the comparison. So it's important that if you're leaving one school to the next school, that you make available or try to obtain, to maintain your course syllabi and course descriptions, because many schools don't keep that on file. And when you go to apply, we're going to ask you, besides sending us your transcript, we need a description of the course. What's the course say? And many schools don't maintain that, and the student has nothing to show. I know here, you do have that here, but at some schools we don't have that, so I would encourage you to maintain those records. Number 3, the government, basically we would request this from your university, a letter verifying that the degree, the university is authorized to award that degree. We've had some instances where students have gone to schools and received a degree in occupational therapy, but the government did not authorize the school to issue that degree. And so essentially it wasn't even recognized by their own government. How could we recognize it if their own government didn't recognize it? So it's very important that the degree come from a school that has recognition by the government. And all documents must be really delivered to us as a primary source. That means that your transcript would come from your registrar or your university. You would email to us, would come from your university to verify those type of things. In the process it takes, if all the documentation comes in, and this is an online process, you don't have to mail us anything. You can upload all your documents on the computer. It takes about 4 weeks. But if we, for example, students from this school, after we complete the evaluation, it will be much quicker because we'll have all the documentation on file. We will be asking you to send in individual documentation. So that's one of the things that we are continually trying to do, is get more universities to provide us with their information. So if there's students that want to take the test, they can go up on the OTED and just completely background information, who you are, that type of information. Is there any questions about the OTED? I must be doing okay. Certification renewal. In the United States, you must renew your certification every 3 years. Much like here in Taiwan, you have a requirement to complete your certification. We have about a renewal rate of 90% with NBCOT. That's very high. And the reason it's 90% is a vast majority of employers, hospitals, clinics, require that their therapists maintain their OTR credential. If you do not renew your certification, we pull that credential back from you. You must renew the certification in order to maintain the credential. We are in the process right now of having a renewal season, so to speak. And right now we have about 85% people are coming through and renewing, so we're hoping we'll reach 90% again next year. One of the things that we do, you hear the word evidence-based practice a lot, don't you? Everything's evidence-based practice. Well, we know, at least back in the United States, that once a student graduates, they have very little access to evidence. Their library is not available to them anymore. They don't have time to go to find journals. It's very expensive to try to do that. So what we do, because we tell people, we advocate, you must practice based on evidence. But how can we insist that people practice based on evidence if we don't make evidence available to them? So what we do as for our people that are certified is that we give them a free subscription to a evidence-based database called ProQuest. ProQuest has over 170,000 citations of research and journal articles and dissertations on a whole range of professions, from psychiatry to physical therapy to occupational therapy to speech, everything. We make that available to the student and to people that are certified for free. We give that to them so they can practice evidence and not have a feel like information is not available to them. So that's one of our goals, is to always maintain a resource for people to practice. Because how can we say we want you to use evidence if we don't make it available to you, particularly if you're not in an educational institution? We do know, though, that faculty that are in educational institutions have libraries. Here you have a medical library, you have a university library, but once you leave, at least back home, you don't have access to that any longer. So we like to make that available to them. It all comes through the internet, obviously, but it's a resource for people to gain access to evidence. Years ago, the U.S. government Institute of Medicine produced a report on identifying what the continuing education needs were of healthcare workers in the 21st century. They identified those 5 areas as that a healthcare worker must be proficient in the 21st century. Client-centered care, and we hear that all the time in OT. Client-centered care, work in interprofessional teams, employ evidence-based practice, employ quality improvement, and use informatics, electronic medical records, and those type of things. That is the basis for NBCOT's certification renewal program. We built our program around the U.S. government's study on what healthcare workers need in the 21st century. So to do that, we then said, what's the best way of helping therapists who are practicing get exposed to new research to assess their ability to assimilate that new research into their practice setting? So we developed a series of tools, games, that we make available to the therapist to help satisfy our certification renewal requirement. We are quite excited about that. The feedback we have received from our therapists has been very positive concerning the use of the games. And number 2, it's based on evidence. So there are certain games. We have a sort of an overview of some of the games here. But each game is built around evidence from the ProQuest research database. So when you complete a game, you get a report as to what research articles were built around the game. So you then go back and read in detail what the intent of the game was. And these are some of the tools that we have. And
welcome to the NBCOT Navigator. The NBCOT Navigator is a continuing competency suite of tools to help keep certificates at the top of their game. Let's take a look at some of the exciting new offerings housed within the NBCOT Navigator tool suite. It all starts with a self-reflection. Here you review your current practice experiences and plans for professional development. Once you complete the questionnaire, you will receive a recommended tool list customized just for you. With the new case simulations, mini practice quizzes, and knowledge match games, you can validate your practice strengths in many different areas. So come on, let's take a look at the new offerings in the NBCOT Navigator. We'll start with case simulations. These are virtual case scenarios where you can demonstrate observation skills, practice your assessment skills,